We are joining you this morning with some major developments in the trial for the three men charged with the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. If you've been following along, you know, yesterday, one of the defendants, Travis McMichael, took the stand, sharing what he calls his side of the story and what led up to the fatal shooting of Arbery. Take a listen at what he had to say yesterday while he was on the stand.
Today, in another high-profile trial, the killing of Ahmaud Arbery. Today, defendant Travis McMichael broke down as he talked about the moments right before he shot Arbery 3 times and killed him.
Like a running back, like he's ready to bolt or to move any way he wanted, you know. But it was focused on me. I get to the front of the truck, and he turns. It's on me. I mean, in a flash. I mean, immediately on me.
On you doing what?
He grabs the shotgun, and I believe I was struck on that first instance that we made contact.
What were you thinking at that moment?
I was thinking of my son. It sounds weird, but that was the first thing that hit me.
What did you do?
I shot.
Why?
He had my gun. He struck me. It was obvious that he was attacking me, that if he would have got the shotgun from me, this is a life or death situation. And I'm going to have to stop him from doing this, so I shot.
Did he stop when you shot?
He did not. I shot again because I was still fighting. He was all over me. He was still all over that shotgun, and he was not relenting. So I shot again to stop him. That final shot, he disengaged. And at that point, he let go, he turned and continued to run.
Virtually the same defense as Rittenhouse's, that he fired the gun in self-defense as the victim was attacking him, going for his gun, that there was nothing else he could do.
Is it always dangerous to put your client on the stand? Absolutely. But in this situation, you have to. He's not saying I didn't do it. He's saying I was justified in doing it. And so you have to offer some evidence to support that justification. Here's citizen's arrest and self-defense. Not saying I agree, just saying there has to be some evidence. And with these facts, I don't know what you would have without his testimony.
And joining us now to discuss further is Pastor Anthony Galloway. Anthony, you know, we talk a lot about the historical context, especially when there are trials that are happening for the murder of Black men. And this defense that Travis is using is not necessarily a new one. This is something that we've heard before, oftentimes to try to get defendants off.
And I think the clip at the end kind of telling you this is the Hail Mary that they have to go to at this point, because there is no denying the fact that they created the situation in the first place. And this is the thing that's challenging for me. This is very problematic for me, largely because this speaks of the history of trying to flip and turn and use the fear for self-defense. This is what caused folks to gather into mobs and lynch folks, right? Because why we paint this picture that somehow the person who's being clearly victimized is the aggressor, is the one that was challenging. And then, you know, bringing in, I thought about my son. Well, were you thinking about that before you brought a gun into a situation and ran up on somebody in the first place, which you had no business doing? Right. Even if you go along with the defense that he just gave on the stand about justifying his own action, this is coming back to the stand your ground arguments and all these other things that we've seen before. This isn't problematic because it speaks of this mental model of the scary, angry Black man. And even this is the same mental model that undergirds the Black pastor comment of the defense attorneys. And so these are the troubling patterns, and the concern becomes you can't defend yourself by running away. You can't defend yourself by trying to get out of a situation. You can't defend yourself by Ahmaud Arbery saying, okay, if, you know, let me let me try to get myself out of this situation and still be the one that is upheld as the victim or the aggressor. We even saw, you cover the George Floyd events in the Chauvin trial, Arbery. And you saw the same defense tactic trying to somehow put the police officers who were clearly in powerful control the entire time as somehow having being a victimizer, scared for his own life there. It's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to talk more about the pastor comment. But before we get to that, when you think about Travis's testimony yesterday, it is always really risky putting a defendant on the stand. You referenced the Chauvin trial. Chauvin did not take the stand because it can be really, really risky. It can it can incriminate them if they say the wrong things. In this case, Travis shared that there had been an increase in crime in his neighborhood, and that on February 11th, he witnessed someone. He didn't see them clearly. And although he didn't catch them at that time, when he saw Ahmaud Arbery jogging through his neighborhood, he was convinced that it was the same person. And, when I hear statements like this, it's deeply concerning, because as just a civilian, a regular resident who doesn't have, training, you're not a police officer, you are making these decisions and choices to go and pursue someone and do a civil arrest without having any substantial evidence. This is just based on your own intuition. And so even in cases where we're seeing officers who use force excessively and unjustifiably, right? And these officers have years of training oftentimes, or they're going back through training and they're not getting it right. It's very dangerous when we're at this moment in our country where we need police reform, or we need a whole new system for public safety, yet and still we have citizens who aren't trained, who are taking these kinds of matters into their own hand.
It is for me, as long as the mental models that villainize Black folks and people of color and make them seem to be made to seem aggressive. This goes all the way back to Carl Linnaeus's in the 1700s, trying to scientifically classify people along racialized lines. Talks about the Afrikaners being ruled by animalistic instincts or caprice. This has been the pattern for a long time, for a lot of different reasons over time. As long as that mental model continues to persist, you'll continue to see folks try to justify creating situations for people of color, particularly Black and brown bodies, to die or be assaulted. And this, to me, is just another peg in that continued mental model that needs to be uprooted.
And when you think if Arbery were here, if Ahmaud Arbery were here, what would be his story? What would be his side of what happened? Because you have this defendant who got on the stand yesterday, Travis McMichael, who says he's acting in self-defense. But if you're jogging in your neighborhood and somebody runs up on you with a shotgun, do you not have any rights to defend yourself? And so I wish and I truly hope that those jurors are able to take what McMichael said on the stand yesterday and also think about what you would do if someone ran up on you with a gun, right? I mean, are you supposed to stand it's just, I don't see any person logically who would be in that situation who surrenders to a citizen's arrest. Because I mean, 9 times out of 10, if someone who does not have a law enforcement uniform on runs up on you with a gun, you're likely going to think they're robbing you or they're attacking you. And so I don't know if the prosecution has any plans to paint that picture and allow the jurors to have some what if moments. for how Ahmaud was thinking and feeling and responding in that moment. But what do you expect from a person who is approached by three individuals and there's a gun? What do you expect? How do you expect the person to react to that? Because what Travis McMichael described, it sounded like Ahmaud was trying to save his own life, not attack them. Ahmaud didn't have a gun.
It's a flimsy proposition to go down the road of personal self-defense when it's a situation that you created. And as somebody who's been in a situation where a group of white guys has come run up on you and you've had to fight, I've been there. and what if you go down the road of what if that was his response to defend himself? What if that was the time he was like, not today? This is not about to happen to me again today. What if this is what if going through his mind was, here's another pattern? All of these are important and legitimate questions, but I can't stress enough. They created the situation. This is the kind of gaslighting that bullies our children in schools racially. This is the kind of gaslighting that gets folks to microaggress us into early death. This is the unfortunately in this case directly. This to me is gaslighting. You can't claim self-defense in a situation you created and you had no business being there. And it's problematic if we allow these things to continue.
And the thing I believe, Anthony, that gives people like Travis McMichael confidence to go out in the world and act in this manner is the fact that they had the protection of the DA. You had Jackie Johnson, who stepped up, who intervened, who told local law enforcement not to arrest them. And we'll see what happens in her case because she has now been charged. But I want to pivot here. I know we have Ben Dixon on with us as well, who is live outside of the courthouse this morning, because today what we're expecting to happen in outside of that courthouse is more than 200 pastors are going to gather there after the comment was made by the defense attorney that he didn't want Black pastors in the courtroom after an appearance by Jesse Jackson. Ben, do you know, I think you said that they're anticipating a lot more than 200 pastors. Yeah. Do you have any insight as to what churches might be there today?
Yes. Good morning, Georgia, and good morning, Pastor Galloway. We are here at the Brunswick County Courthouse, and we have started seeing pastors gather already. So far, they're gathering in front of the courthouse, as you can see behind me. They are coming out to make a statement for the people. And then on the south side of the courthouse, they are gathering with a large stage, a lot of seats ready for the pastors to do their prayer vigil. We are expecting over 200 pastors. Pastor Jamal Bryant from New Birth Baptist Church there in Atlanta is spearheading this, along with Reverend Al Sharpton, Benjamin Crump, and others.
No, thank you so much, Ben. And Anthony, I'd love to have you chime in here as a pastor yourself. What were you thinking when you heard the defense ask for a mistrial because of the presence of a Black pastor inside the courtroom?
Again, this continued pattern is what was going through my mind. And this was the conversation of the pastors in our local areas. We were deciding how to support folks who wanted to go and be a part of this event. So they are AME pastors, Baptist pastors, Kojic pastors, all across the country who are showing up and are present right now. The thing that was going through my head mostly, though, was this continued pattern of trying to present, in particular, Black folks as threats. Somehow that our presence makes it impossible for something to get done. In this case, that's what was going through my mind. I just saw it as a continuation of what was going through Travis McMichael's mind when he rolled up on Ahmaud Arbery. So That was going through my mind. The other piece that was coming through my mind, though, was the important need to show up in solidarity. Remember, it was Black pastors who Lincoln tried to gather in order to repatriate us back to the continent of Africa, who said no, and tried to gather Black pastors again. Sherman did for the 40 acres and a mule conversation. So Black pastors represent something in this country that is a threat to white supremacy, and I think that was what was going through the minds of myself and many other Black pastors that I was talking to, in response to that. It's like, oh, no, OK, it's time to pull up and show up.
Well, and I want to go back to Ben here because I know he is live. Ben, we're talking about men of faith here who are going to be praying specifically with Ahmaud Arbery's mother, right? Helping console her and helping her get through this difficult moment. Have you been able to speak to any of the pastors and why they feel like it's so significant to be here in this moment?
I've had a chance to speak with a couple of pastors, and they are still gathering, Georgia. The sentiment is simply this, and it's really what Pastor Galloway just said. The role of the Black pastor in history has been significant, and they're showing up again to show the significance of the Black pastor, the Black church, and the Black radical tradition.
And Ben, it brings me back to this conversation you and I have all the time about Black protesting, right? When Kaepernick took a knee, oh, that's terrible. Don't do that. Mm-hmm. But then after George Floyd was murdered, we saw buildings burnt down. And then people were like, please don't do that. Take a knee if you have to, right?
That's right.
And then now we're seeing pastors who are standing in solidarity, offering, pathways for families to express themselves through their faith. Very, very peaceful way of gathering and coping with such a difficult moment. Yet and still there is a protest to this family having any ability to lean into their spirituality in this moment.
That's right, because they understand the spirituality, and Pastor Galloway can speak to this far better than I can, but the intersection of spirituality and action, faith without works is dead, according to many of the pastors that are here. And so their faith in action is to stand up for those families in real time. Besides, Georgia, what good is our faith if it's not here to serve us in some of the most difficult times that you could possibly imagine?
And why is that considered a threat?
And
that's the question of the hour.
That is the question. I want to remind us that in the George Floyd case in Minnesota, we saw two clergy marches, one in Minneapolis and one in St. Paul, that garnered intersectional, interfaith, and interracial clergy from across the state. Over 200 gathered in each of those cities and marched. What it represented is the same thing it represented on Bloody Sunday at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. When you have this interfaith, it's a huge threat to business as usual that would start to address in these systems of oppression that we are talking about. That's the threat. And it's a lot harder to keep that going when you are bringing faith leaders into the mix, because now I have to question the moral compass of this, which bends towards justice. And so that is the threat to me that's coming up and being represented here.
And Ben, do you anticipate that this gathering, is it going to last the entire day, or have you gotten any insight as to how long members in the faith community will be outside the courtroom today?
You know what, to be honest with you, this is starting to have a festival style feel in terms of the number of people who are here, the amount of media that's here. I had a chance to speak with Roland Martin. Their camp is set up right here next to me. He's going to be broadcasting live from here at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So we have an expectation that this is going to be an all day event. The prayer vigil portion of this begins at 11 o'clock in the South parking lot. And we are going to cover it from there. But George, I do expect that this is going to be going on all day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And let's just be clear. The presence of a Black pastor did not qualify for a mistrial.
That's right.
But Ben, thank you so much for being there this morning. We will continue to check in with you. Is there any other updates that we should be aware of as you're there live right now?
Georgia, we're just keeping an eye on all of the action. There are quite a few police the police presence here is strong, but that's to be expected around the courthouse. We do expect everything to be pretty peaceful today, such as the presence of the black pastor. So we're just going to be keeping an eye on all the developments.
Well, I want to take a look here, and Ben, feel free to stick around if you're able to. But today at 4 p.m. Central Time, we are expecting that Julius Jones will be executed. And this comes after more than 6 million people have signed a petition. This comes after evidence has surfaced that has caused doubt for a lot of people who worked on this case, specifically the fact that Christopher Jordan has admitted to other people that he actually was the one who killed Paul Howell. And he admitted this to 3 people who didn't know each other. Those 3 individuals came forward and they signed affidavits admitting that this was a confession that they heard. And throughout the 20 years that Julius Jones has been in jail, he has remained, he has continued to claim his innocence. I believe we have some audio on this. I want you guys to take a listen from individuals who have been advocating on this issue.
Governor there has less than 24 hours to decide the fate of Julius Jones. He was convicted of a murder in 2002, a murder he insists he did not commit. His execution scheduled for 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. The state's governor, Kevin Stitt, has the power to halt it and commute his sentence to life in prison with parole. That's the recommendation from the parole board, but on which the governor has yet to act. Jones says an acquaintance framed him in the murder of an insurance executive more than 20 years ago. The governor's mansion now surrounded by a barricade of barrels and yellow tape in preparation for protests. Some big names are calling on the governor to take action. NFL quarterback Baker Mayfield, NBA player Blake Griffin and Russell Westbrook, and Kim Kardashian West, all backing Jones. CNBC's Valerie Castro now on Julius Jones' fight for his life.
The family of Julius Jones, including his mother Madeline, was left to watch the door close after a denied request to meet with Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt, the man set to decide the fate of the death row inmate. Jones was convicted in the 1999 murder of Paul Howell, shot to death in front of his daughters during a carjacking in the family's driveway. Jones maintains he had an alibi that night, speaking to the Pardon and Parole Board.
I am not the person responsible for taking Mr. Howell's life. I was not involved in the planning of this robbery. I was not present during this robbery.
On social media, actor Mandy Patinkin read from a letter written by Jones's mother.
We were never given an opportunity to tell our story. The other evidence exonerating Julius was never heard by the jury.
The family of Paul Howell also testified in front of the parole board, adamant that Jones is a guilty man.
Julius Jones has taken full advantage of everyone in his life and in this situation, including you, the board members here today.
High school students staged a walkout Wednesday, making their way to the Oklahoma State Capitol, joining a rally outside the governor's office as the hours continue to count down.
We want our governor to know is that the world is watching. The world is watching. The world is watching. But also the future is watching.
Jones claims he was set up by a high school acquaintance who planted the murder weapon in his home. That person was sentenced to life for his role in the crime, but was released early as part of a plea agreement to testify against Jones. The governor is reportedly praying about this decision.
Now, Anthony, in this case, the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board did vote 3-1 on November 1st to commute Jones. And so the decision rests solely on Governor Stitt, and he has been radio silence this entire time. And the family, I think, is losing hope that he is going to intervene and do something before his 4 p.m. execution.
This is a very difficult one. I've been in the support role for folks who have tried to advocate and work with the legal system that doesn't seem to want to listen. And time often ends up being the thing that helps us to get clarity. And we seem to be ignoring that impulse. Even the parole board is seeing that impulse, saying, you know what, if we've got this much evidence to the contrary, why don't we take some time and move to life without parole? And so that we don't make the mistake. I mean, and I understand some of the prevailing winds here. Folks in the country, and I've actually walked into and heard this directly from folks in communities that I've talked to. Folks feel like justice is not going in their favor for those who want business as usual and want scary black men killed and put in locked in jail, and justice to them makes me feel like this bad guy's going to get it, regardless of whether or not we actually have the evidence that this is really the bad guy. And so I feel like there's folks who feel like they're losing these battles. The Chauvin trial represents a loss to certain folks. And so regardless of the evidence or the clear thinking of let's take our time and get this right, folks want to win in the other column because justice has been seemingly winning to groups of folks. And so it struck me to see the family calling for the death, when the other option that's here is still life without parole, at least according to the legal space for where they're at, let alone, what may come when we find out more evidence. Let's not forget we have many examples of wrongful death with the death penalty. And so to me, it's a no brainer, but the governor has to take a political calculation. If he intervenes here and seems to be lenient, he's got to contend with the folks who will count that as another loss to white centrality in the United States. These are some of the issues that are kind of at play here. I think this is not just a spiritual decision by the governor. I think this is absolutely a political one that is having conflict. And so in that space, silence makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there was evidence that was recovered that, allows the family to continue to say that these rallies and protests for Julius makes them feel re-victimized. There was a gun with a red bandana wrapped around it, which is what the suspect wore when they fatally shot Paul, right? And that they said that they found that in Julius's home. However, what was also said and determined is that Christopher Jordan stayed at Julius's house the day after the murder. And so when you have three people who have signed an affidavit saying that Jordan is the one who admitted and actually said that he framed Julius, right? Anytime, and think about this system, is this spiritual? Is it political? Or should we really be leaning into the way our criminal justice system is designed to work? Because the last time I checked, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty without the shadow of a doubt. And now, because of these affidavits that have been signed, sworn testimony by three separate people saying that Julius did not do it, that he was set up. Is that not merit a retrial? Especially when you look back in the 90s and in the technology that they had to go through evidence. We have had significant advancements in our technology. And so they could go through and do DNA testing on the gun, do DNA testing on that bandana, and truly determine whether or not this, this death sentence is merited for Julius. But even looking at the parole board, 3-1, November 1st. Why is Julius still sitting in jail?
And, you're talking to somebody who does not support the death penalty in any way, shape, or form. As much as hard as that may seem, if I'm, in the pro-life argument, you can't be for it on one end of the spectrum and not on the other. And so, for me, it's a no-brainer to take death off the table, especially when you have those contentions there. But there's something in here around the plea. I've had a lot of young men who have come through our programs and come through our programming that have been pressured to take plea deals, that if they actually could afford the kind of defense, quality defense that we would wish anybody would have, then they would have never taken those pleas. And oftentimes it's presented as a way to get out or avoid some of these harsher things. And so the plea deal that was taken by, as you brought up, the other folks who were suspects and possibly involved in the framing, that plea that I'm going to take this plea so that I get off the hook, but then it puts somebody else in a hot seat, whether or not the evidence really lines up for them. This is a problem. And folks who resist pleas like this in many cases are often punished or put higher pressure on you. You're told it's going to be worse for you if you don't plea out to something lesser or come and enter a guilty plea or something like that. This has been used